Brother Joe, I want to thank you for that very, very kind introduction. You're an outstanding trade unionist. You're a great leader and a true good friend. I want to thank you for all of that. And Brother Richard and John and the entire SMART team, you're doing an incredible job leading this union forward. And your convention theme, the focus on the future, is exactly what the labor movement must do in these challenging times. And quite frankly, we can all learn a lot, Joe, from your union, from SMART's experience. Because in an era where mergers are far and few between, this union found a way to come together and combine forces, building SMART into the powerhouse that it is today. And I know it wasn't easy. The sheet metal workers and UTU had different memberships and perspectives and some real disagreements. But by putting egos aside and embracing your common values, your common vision, you've positioned the members of SMART to win more at the bargaining table and in the halls of power. And if you wouldn't mind, Joe, I would just ask that we never forget Joe Nigro's role in all of that. He was a great leader and a great friend. Today, your apprenticeship programs are second to none. You're a force on Capitol Hill and in state legislatures across the country. And because of your leadership, New Mexico recently became the first state, the first of many, I might say, in the nation to require that fire control systems are properly inspected, repaired. And in Washington, D.C., you are the strongest possible advocate for modern infrastructure and rail worker safety. Your commitment to providing disaster relief within 24 hours is a model for the entire labor movement, and your capital strategies work exposed Seabreeze's blatant misuse of mandatory arbitration. And your member-to-member substance abuse and mental health support program is providing hope and saving lives. You know, Joe, that's a tremendous record of accomplishment. And it happened because of your combined strengths and your combined expertise. See, that's the power of SMART. Now, as you may know, the AFL-CIO formed a commission on the future of work and unions. We've spent the past year looking at ways for working people to shape innovation and to capture a bigger piece of the pie. President Sellers has been an invaluable member of our commission and in making the case for consolidation as a tool for building power. You see, brothers and sisters, you are very, very fortunate to have a visionary leadership team guided by Joe Sellers, and so is the labor movement. And Joe, I just want to say, on behalf of the entire labor movement, thank you for all that you do. Now, I'm going to spend a good bit of time here today focusing on the future, but I simply can't ignore what's happening right now. See, the recent mass slaughter of innocent life in El Paso and Dayton is weighing heavy on my heart. And it was less than 2 years ago that a madman stood from a perch just down the street at Mandalay Bay and committed the worst mass shooting in American history. And since then, there's been massacres at schools and stores and synagogues. And our political system, with its division and distraction and outright incompetence, has failed to deliver a coherent solution to this national crisis. See, Americans are being scapegoated. We're being minimized, We're being dehumanized and told to go back to where we came from. Racist dog whistles have been replaced with megaphones. Women are openly degraded and discriminated against. The free press is under attack. The very foundation of our democracy is being chipped away at. And America's welcome mat, long a beacon of hope for immigrants, refugees, and asylum seekers, including my very own parents, is being bulldozed and paved over and replaced with a clear message: you're not welcome here. The El Paso shooter traveled more than 600 miles to kill Mexican immigrants. Think about that for a minute. Traveled 600 miles. In moments like this, it's easy to say that America has lost her way. But Joe, I think it's even worse than that. The forces of greed in our nation, both elected and not, are pulling America apart deliberately and strategically in order to line their own pockets. Dr. King called the labor hater and the race baiter a twin-headed creature. And he understood that the guardians of the status quo want us poor, weak, and divided. And today they're laughing themselves all the way to the bank. See, the cure for this cancer has always been the same. It's called solidarity. And I'm talking about real solidarity, not empty gestures and bandwagon posturing. I'm talking about the type of solidarity where the outcome is still uncertain and where it may cost you a little bit in the short term to practice real solidarity. See, solidarity is most important when times are tough and disagreements are strong. When it's so dark that you can't see your hand right in front of your face. How we respond to the challenges and the opportunities of today and in the days to come will define who and what we are as a labor movement, as a nation, and as a generation. You see, together, we're the strongest force for good in the history of the world. But apart, we're nothing more than competing tribes fighting over the scraps that fall off the table. See, brothers and sisters, this is a moment for unions. We bring people together. We bargain contracts where no one, and I mean no one, is left behind. So my message today to the nation's workers is, if you want to change the direction of this country, if you want to beat back hate, if you want to save our democracy, if you want to win a new day for America's workers, then come join us in the labor movement. Join us, and all workers will get stronger along the way. You see, in the richest country in the world, at our most rich point in time, every worker should be paid enough to support their family. One job should be enough. No one should go broke just because they got sick. No one should be afraid of dying at work or at school or at the mall. No one should earn less because of their gender. No one should be fired for who they are. Everyone should have a voice, everyone should have a fair shot and a fair shake, and everyone should be able to form a union. This is our time, this is our moment, this is our country, and we are taking it back for the workers of this country. Joe, I hope you indulge me for a few minutes, because I want to talk about the President of the United States. He's not normally a big part of my speeches for two reasons. First, attention is his oxygen. And second, our movement is so much bigger than any one politician, even a president. But Donald Trump needs to be challenged, confronted, and more often than not, condemned. Our labor movement is a family. And like most families across America, we don't always agree. 37% of AFL-CIO affiliated union members voted for this president. In SMART, I suspect the number was slightly higher. And honestly, I'm not surprised. I wasn't surprised that some working people turned away from a party that gave us NAFTA, that taxed our health care plans, that took the Wall Street referees off the field. I wasn't surprised that working people didn't go running to a presidential candidate who called TPP the gold standard and said that she would put coal miners out of business, and her running mate, who is still one of the only Senate Democrats refusing to co-sponsor labor law reform right now, the PRO Act. You see, I strongly believe that the 2016 election was an indictment of political elites in both parties that for too long have embraced policies that hold down wages, increase inequality, diminish opportunity, and ship American jobs overseas. And in between his divisive and hateful rhetoric, Donald Trump made promises that spoke directly to working people. He promised to protect American jobs. He promised to fix NAFTA and invest in infrastructure. He ripped Wall Street greed and pledged his commitment to changing the economic rules. Well, he changed them all right, but not to benefit America's workers. Wall Street got another tax windfall. The new NAFTA is more NAFTA than new. We haven't spent a penny on infrastructure, and President Trump stormed out of a negotiating session with Congress because he got his feelings hurt. Can you imagine one of us acting like that at the bargaining table? Leaving because an employer hurt our feelings? Look, workplace safety regulations have been gutted. Trump's appointed Supreme Court justices cast the deciding votes imposing national right to work on public sector. The administration is proposing massive cuts to Amtrak and wants to replace union-registered apprenticeships with what I like to call I-craps. Now let me be clear. The government should be focusing on actually enforcing our labor laws. Leave the apprenticeships to us. We know how to do it better than anybody. And just last week in Mississippi, immigration authorities came to our workplaces to deport our members. And Antonio Scalia's son, a management-side lawyer with a history of union busting, may soon be the next Secretary of Labor. And if that wasn't bad enough, he spent much of his time in office tearing people down, ripping our country apart at the seams. He uses Twitter accounts to demean and divide rather than to inform and inspire. He routinely picks on the most vulnerable among us: women of color, people with disabilities, transgender Americans, immigrants, even Gold Star families. That's what bullies do. The biggest gap between the last two presidents isn't policy, it's decency. But here's the good news. The change that voters cried out for in the 2016 election can be found by standing together in unions. And that's why we're more committed than ever to helping working people win a voice on the job. And that's why we're focusing on passing the PRO Act, protecting the right to organize. The PRO Act would let us do our job without interference from anti-union employers or anti-worker politicians. It protects the right to strike. It rolls back the right to work. It includes first contract arbitration, substantial relief for workers whose rights have been violated, and real penalties for employers who break the law. And here's one of the most underrated pieces of this legislation. It removes the employer's standing in representation cases. The choice to form a union should be that of workers alone. They don't ask us for input when they're making a decision about who's going to represent them, so they have no business attempting to influence who we choose to sit down and represent us at the bargaining table. They should be out, and the PRO Act will take them out. So we need to contact your members of Congress, Republicans and Democrats. Tell them to do their job so we can do ours. Urge them to pass the PRO Act at once. People want a voice on the job. Solidarity, the fundamental belief that we're stronger together than we are apart, and the principle, the core principle that led to the creation of SMART is being embraced in every corner of the country. And at a time when politics and culture, our politics and our country's culture, want us isolated and angry and ready to blame each other, working people instead are turning towards one another. Listen to this. Union approval is at 62%, the highest in 16 years. 2018 was the biggest year for collective action in a generation. MIT found that more than 60 million workers would vote for a union today if given the chance. What we need to do, let's go sign them up. Let's respond to hate with love. Let's respond to division with solidarity. Let's respond to fear with hope. Let's respond to crisis with unshakable commitment. Let's strategize. Let's organize. Let's mobilize. Let's show this country what the American labor movement is all about. We build her, we'll build her again in the image that cares for workers, that supports workers, and gives every worker an opportunity. Part of focusing on the future requires a plan to do better in 2020. At our 2017 convention, we passed a resolution committing the labor movement to electing more union members to public office. And in the nearly 2 years since, that's exactly what we've done. In 2018, SMART members won state house seats in Arizona, in Connecticut, and Montana. See, you were part of a national worker wave. Because of our efforts recruiting and training and supporting labor candidates, we added 960-some members to the halls of power. We sent 2 to the U.S. Senate. We sent 3 to the governor's mansions. We sent 18 to the House of Representatives and over 940 to state, House, and Senate seats. And that's led to the passage of pro-worker legislation from coast to coast and everywhere in between. See, brothers and sisters, we need to do even more in 2020. I had the opportunity to speak before the most recent presidential debate in Detroit, and I let the candidates know and the entire country know one thing: the labor movement will not settle for a union ambivalent Democrat. We deserve better, we're demanding better, and we can win better. Better than a president who promises the world and then gives us the shaft. Better than Democrats who take our money and then forget who got them elected in the first place. Better than cookie-cutter politicians who think a rising stock market is more important than rising wages. You see, we need a pro-union president, and that means talking to us, getting to know us. It means visiting our work sites and our union halls. It means marching on our picket lines. It means learning about our hopes and our dreams and understanding our concerns. It means an agenda that's unambiguously pro-worker and pro-union. It means having a plan to make it easier to form unions and harder to bust unions. It means knowing inside and out how trade and tax and labor and immigration policies have been used to better working families and being ready to fix them on day one. You see, the late governor of New York, Mario Cuomo, said you campaign in poetry and you govern in prose. But for too long, brothers and sisters, our elected leaders have campaigned in promises and governed in excuses. You see, we're refusing to accept business as usual. We simply can't, when in some parts of our country it's still harder to form a union than it is move a mountain. Not when nearly 40% of Americans don't have $400 in a bank for an emergency. Not when 80% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, but CEO profits are at record highs. Working people built this country from the ground up, and we keep her running. Yet too often, we've been disrespected, disregarded, abandoned, taken for granted. So we're demanding a president from him or her the same thing that we demand of ourselves: hard work, integrity, honor, guts, grit, and sacrifice. And it doesn't matter if it's a D or an R or an I next to your name. If you refuse to truly make our cause your cause, then we're not going to endorse you. But if you join us, and fight for us and walk in our shoes, and we'll move heaven and earth to elect you. And together we can put this country back where it belongs, in the hands of workers who make it go. You see, we'll march for it, we'll organize for it, we'll fight for it. We're going to fight for higher pay. We're going to fight for better health care. We're going to fight for a secure retirement. We're going to fight for the best transportation and infrastructure in the world, where trains have 2 qualified crew members, a conductor and an engineer. And we're going to fight for an economy where every single worker has the freedom to form a union. You see, we've earned it, brothers and sisters. We teach, we heal, we make, we package, we print, we bake, we fix the roofs, we ride the rails, we lift the loads, we care for the sick, we keep America warm in the winter and cool in the summer. We serve our nation with dignity and pride. We stand tall, we don't run, and we don't hide. We wake our country up every morning. We tuck her to bed every night. This is our time. This is our moment. We are the American labor movement, and we will not be denied.